Hi everyone, I'm Julia with the Berkeley Judicial Institute, back with another installment of Judges in the Community. Today we're joined by Judge Rendell and Judge Rufe to share the inspiring civic engagement work they do in community colleges. Good morning, Judge Rendell and Judge Rufe. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. I can't wait to dive into your journey and insights. But just to start out, maybe starting with Judge Rendell, would you mind briefly sharing a little bit more about who you are, where you sit, and your personal judicial history?
Sure. My name is Marjorie Rendell. I'm a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit that sits in Philadelphia. We hear appeals from all of the district courts in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and the Virgin Islands. I started out as a district court judge and then was elevated to the Court of Appeals in the late 90s. I have been a judge for 30 years. I was a practicing lawyer for 21 years before that. And I am now a senior judge, which means that I can continue my work on the court for as long as I want, which is really a wonderful thing. I'm also the chairman of a nonprofit called the Rendell Center for Civic Engagement, and we do a lot of work in the community as well. So I think I have two hats that enable me to be in the community talking about civics education.
Amazing. And Judge Rufe?
Good morning. Well, it's afternoon for Judge Rendell and myself. It is a lovely day to be talking about something that we love, and that's civics education, in particular, the adult civics education course. I have been a judge since 1994 because I was a state court judge elected to that position before I went to federal court in 2002. So I've been a judge 31 years now in both state and federal jurisdictions. And it seemed to me that there never was a judicial role or a legal role that I handled as a new and young public defender, 1977, going on to private practice in between, and then running for judge, where I wasn't engaged in some type of civics ed. And possibly because I was already known for having a background as a high school social studies teacher. When I first graduated college, I became, for 2 years, a social studies and American history high school teacher, 10th and 11th grades. I didn't love it because I wanted to be in law school, but I had deferred. And I knew I'd get back to it, and I did in 4 years. But I did find it very valuable. And it did give me the framework upon which I could approach most of the civics ed programs that I like to engage in or develop. And this adult civics education program is one of them. The other work I did most intensely involving civics education was really in the district court where I sit. I am a district court judge appointed in 2002, sitting since then, in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, which courthouse is centered. My courthouse is in Philadelphia, the birthplace of the nation. And that's not lost on me every day when I drive in. But I knew that I wanted to do this, and my court wanted me to do this. So for many years, before I joined Judge Rendell in the circuit, the Third Circuit's efforts to engage civics on a broader scale, that was 2018, I would handle the programming for mock trials, for moot courts, for bringing in groups, international and otherwise, of lawyers, judges, and mostly high school students. We were really targeting that because the Administrative Office of the United States Court was targeting that and developed programs specifically for high schoolers. We thought that was a good objective because that could engage schools, administration of schools, parents, teachers, as well as the students. And yet there was this big group in the community that I knew we weren't reaching that way. And that leads us to where we go next.
Well, thank you so much for your amazing introductions. It is such an honor to speak with you both. So now diving right into the core of our conversations today, what project are you here to share with us and where did it all begin? Maybe Judge Rufe, do you want to start us off?
I can. In 2018, when I began to co-chair the Courts, Community, and Rule of Law committee by the circuit, and the chief judge at that time, Brooke Smith, really was devoted to this concept. And I asked him, can I now, will you give me and will you support the idea of an adult civics education course? And he said, absolutely. I'm very interested in that myself. So Judge Rendell and I started out as, let's ask questions, let's talk, let's do research. And that's what we did. Most of it we did together. And it was a lot of fun meeting with the Community College of Philadelphia and their administration and trying to find the perfect fit between our course, which we were really starting out as what do we want to tell them about the federal court system, which nobody seems to know much about. If you think the public is ignorant now, you should have seen it then. So we really wanted to start with elementary concepts. And I thought that the Bill of Rights was a good way to entertain what events and considerations would interact with each and every adult in their life. And maybe they could identify and relate and find all of this very useful. So we started that concept. The school liked it, provided most of what we could do with greater difficulty. They had the physical plant, they had the security, they had the marketing, they had the administrative process. And without that, we could not have gotten this off the ground. It would have been a lot harder for the court to run it. As it was, we were populating it. We were creating it, populating it. And then by the interest that we found in what we were communicating to them, we could perfect it. So we've spent the last 5 years, 6 years, trying to get this even better and spread it. And we wanted to market it in community colleges. That was extremely important because we thought that their base, and we let them decide who their base was, and they could tell us the average target was a 26-year-old student. Of course, in our first class, we had seniors, and we still get seniors. And we have the range from 20s to 60s, 65. If they can wheel themselves in, they're there. And I think that that was working. So from my perspective, starting out with a helpful base, and that base continues to today with CCP. And it also continues with other schools that we're now engaged in, such as the Bucks County Community College, a county where I live, and that we have done now. We're in our second spring semester. And that's a similar program. We're perfecting and making more timely the syllabus, and the course presenters are updating whatever they can without being too political. We can't be political at all as judges. And when we present, we make sure that that's the case, but you can't skirt reality. There are students that want answers to questions, and we have to know how to handle that and communicate with them and show them, here's the Constitution, here's the Bill of Rights, here is this law, here is that law. Maybe you should read that, and here's a case, and we're going to talk about that case. We do very little law school type programming. It's very interactive, and we insist on that. So that's the parameters of how we got started.
And just picking up on that notion of the interactive, when we were first starting, we realized we were going to have federal judges teach these classes. Well, we started out with 8 different ones with different topics: Constitution, immigration, criminal law, voting rights. But we had to pick judges that weren't going to just stand up there and lecture and bore the citizenry or go over their heads. So we really focused a lot on the how-to, the methodology for the judges who would go in the classroom, telling them it really has to be interactive. If you want to bring an expert in so you can talk the two of you, mix it up, leave time for Q&A, but do what you can to make it interactive. And we picked the judges who would teach the classes specifically because Cynthia and I know all the judges, so we knew which ones would be able to do this. And we got really rave reviews the first year. Cynthia said we had a wide range of participants, but a lot of seniors. And they really loved it. They gave us rave reviews. And as they came in the first class, we gave them each a Constitution. And we worked with the Constitution during that class. So it was a lot of fun to develop it. And we have a curriculum. But now we're going through our fifth year with community college in Philadelphia. And one of the challenges is marketing, that you can't just say, oh, we have something, please come, and everybody comes. You have to market it. We're kind of mixing up the topics a little bit, putting some interesting topics. First Amendment, is it expression or repression? Trying to get people to have the interest to come. So we'll see how that works. But the community college has been just fantastic. They love it. They really want to make it succeed, and it's just been a great partnership.
I totally agree with that.
That's amazing. And I know you guys kind of talked about the process of creating this curriculum, but I was curious how this kind of evolved over time. Like, has there been any roadblocks or inspirations along the way? If you could tell us more about like the curriculum building in the community college, how it grew to, how it formulates today.
Well, I think actually we let the curriculum be developed by the individual judges
Mhm.
who were going to teach the sessions. They had to manage their time. They had to manage the content. We told them generally what we wanted them to cover, but say in criminal law, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment, that's a lot to cover. So we let the individual judges do it on their own, and it was successful from that standpoint. They did do it in an interactive way. They did do it in a way that would reach the average layperson and not be too sophisticated or too cerebral in terms of what they were teaching. So I think the curriculum kind of developed itself. One of the last sessions we had was understanding what judges do, and it was kind of an interview format, which is pretty free form. But the students really love that. They don't really understand what a judge does, how a judge reasons through a case, that there's precedent, that there, from my standpoint, are standards of review. And in the district court, there are rules of evidence. We know we have the rule of law, but then we have a lot of other rules that judges actually follow. We don't come in and test which way the wind is blowing, which is what I think people think. So the education and the curriculum, I think, just developed itself. But then we had our librarian pull together from all of the judges exactly what their curriculum was and put it in a package. But it's a package, typewritten on paper. But that's not what we did in the class. In the class, we did something, we did a lot of stuff to get the students thinking and responding and asking questions and thinking about things. So we have a curriculum, but the real curriculum is in the minds and conduct of the judges who do it.
That's so true, which only goes back to choose the right people, especially to start out, because you don't want this to be rote in any way. And if it's a little bit harder to get the first one started, well, the second one will go easier. Third one goes even easier, but then you have to keep updating. And I find that a challenge because updating usually means taking what's topical, which usually means what they hear in the press. And there's going to be plenty of questions that the attendants will want to pose about their own situation or somebody's divorce or somebody's like this. I know when I started in the community college here in Bucks County, this is closer to home, closer to state court where I used to sit. And while I may know that law, that's not what this court is about. This isn't about custody cases. This isn't about saving your home from, being taken over by a bank, foreclosure. Unfortunately, those things happen. And some of that can touch on our civil rights concepts. However, we have to keep this a federal court program. I think I feel very strongly about that. And while we bring in state judges to help explain differences and similarities between the federal and state courts, that's been quite a blessing to do that because we can engage the local judiciary that way too. This college now wants to have a separate course for state law. And I keep insisting, well, don't do it here because we can barely fit in what we have in eight courses spread out over one of your semesters. And they're doing it. That's how engaged they are. Even more than that, the Bar Association has thrown in money from their foundation to pay for the $50 certificate fee, which is all that is charged for these. These are not credit courses. These are not part of the school's curriculum, but they're an adjunct to their curriculum. And you don't have to be matriculated into the community college in order to attend this course. So we think it's a good way to approach it. And so far, so good. Still working.
And that's one of the beauties of you working with the community colleges. They are very flexible. They are hungry for content. They look upon us as a gift, which is really wonderful. They're just happy we're there. So it's been a really good relationship. Speaking about updating the curriculum, I will say that one of the topics that we are using in the course we're going to develop for the fall at Community College of Philadelphia has in its title DEI, because DEI is nothing but, it relates to the law of discrimination over the years and whether it complies with the law of discrimination or not. And there are cases that have come down over the years that help instruct you as to what our law is regarding equal protection, equality, preferring someone over another, which can be discrimination. In fact, I said for years that our culture of DEI has never been really in sync with our law. Culturally, as a country, we have valued it, but the law has been resistant based upon the language in the Constitution. So we're using, it is a not popular, but a current modern day terminology that people want to understand. So I think we can adjust to make things a little bit more appealing from a marketing standpoint, while at the same time really educating about legal concepts at the same time.
And in the Bucks County course, we put it into the labor law, employment law, and discrimination. And that's where we're dealing with it, but not the heading. And I'm going to be interested in how these two can compare. Judge Rendell and I will watch this. Did it attract more attention with the community college's revised title, or was it enough to put it into the script? And I don't know. But we definitely are handling it because, as I think I mentioned to Midge, I look at the National Constitution Center, and every day they have another presentation on what I consider very controversial topics. And they do it in a manner which is even, straight, fair. And I'm hoping that we can learn from that because we judges have to do that every day. We're not supposed to be political, and we're not. And we show that we're not when we write our opinions and when we talk in court and make decisions for the reasons that we do. And I'm thinking that we can do this fairly. We can express that type of civil discourse also to the class, which is part and parcel of an entire class, free speech and civil discourse. And that is one that I'm hoping Brooke Smith will take on this year. But if not, we have him with us, Judge Rendell, in the last How Do Judges Decide. So we're going to figure that out next week. But there's so much to think about. But it's not hard if you stick to a basic premise. What do you want to cover? Do you want to cover bankruptcy? Do you want to show the community how to handle a bankruptcy court petition if you need it? I found that one of the first adult civics ed programs was developed in Colorado, our court's Colorado. And the judge there did a really nice job in starting this. It's institutionalized there. But I found it was more user-friendly than it was concept-friendly. And I didn't know that that's exactly how we wanted to do ours. And so far, I haven't changed my mind. So maybe we'll continue and just make this the freshest it can be and the most helpful it can be to the population that we're targeting.
That's amazing. Actually, as part of our series, I did an interview with the our court's judges. And so, yeah, our viewers know how amazing they are at their civic engagement as well. And so, yeah, but I know you guys briefly touched on the participants themselves in these students. But when you reflect on their experience, are there any stories or moments in particular that stand out or speak to the impact or the motivation behind, the changes and your civic engagement work within your community?
I think at Community College of Philadelphia did evaluations, and we got some insight that mainly which sessions they really liked. And the ones they really liked had to do with the judges who I think were the most interactive and the most, really engaged them really well. But I don't think I have any stories as such. I must say our classes were on a Monday evening at 6 o'clock, and it tended to get dark pretty soon. And people skedaddled out of there after the class. So I don't know that there are any actual stories, but maybe Cynthia, you have some. I must say, Cynthia started the Bucks County one. It was just 1 year you've had it, Cynthia?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going into the
and it was so impressive. Of course, our Philadelphia one, the curriculum had been the same. So our participants our numbers were dwindling, I must say. But in Bucks County, it's obviously a different demographic from Philadelphia, much more middle class, upper middle class, husbands and wives coming together, very, very engaged, excellent questions. I mean, as we were talking, you could see the wheels turning. They couldn't wait to raise their hands. And maybe you have stories, Cynthia, from your engagement, but the group is definitely engaged in a major way.
And I thought that many of them were prepared to ask lots more questions if we permitted that type of personal, relation to the class. And we sidestepped that pretty well, I think. But in the Bucks County group, they were very aware of who we were and how important it was that we were there in their community. And they wanted us there, and they can't wait to come back, because I think we'll get a portion of them to re-register. I was talking to the administrator there today. I don't think any one of them was permitted to tell us about their personal story. So we didn't hear how it may or may not affect them. We're pretty good at avoiding that, because it would trample the course content if we allowed that to take over the presenter's objectives. But each one of them was satisfied in the evaluations that they had learned from it and weren't missing something. It was very, I think, honest, that it was good to be there, fun to be there, and they felt like good citizens because they were there. But I knew that a lot of this class was already a good citizen. Just like that first class in Philadelphia, there was a ward leader in there. There was a recently naturalized citizen in that class, and they brought a crowd with them too. I mean, that's lovely. That's wonderful to be reaching out like that. A lot of them were very involved in their community. But I think in the Bucks County class, they were a little more involved. They were more stable in terms of citizenship and their rights and responsibilities, but not to any degree differently than Philadelphia. I felt that the warmth and the joy that I saw in their faces was the same.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and with these interactions with the community and collaborations with various individuals, both on like the programming side and the actual students themselves, I would love to hear a little bit more about the personal impact your involvement has had on you, both as a judge and as an individual.
Well, it's so cool. Now, I mentioned originally that I wear another hat, and that is as the head of the Rendell Center for Civics and Civic Engagement. And as much as I think my judicial service is valuable and the opinions that I write and the interactions and my deciding of cases, I think the other aspect of my life with the Rendell Center and with doing what we do in the Courts of Community Committee probably has much more impact on the citizenry than my day-to-day job. And that brings me a lot of personal satisfaction. The fact that people are interested. And I do love talking to the adults and teaching them, but my favorite part of what the Rendell Center does is with youngsters in their formative years, 5th and 6th grade, teaching them about their rights and their responsibilities as citizens. So, it's just had a great impact. It kind of renews my faith in our democracy, but at the same time, it gets me frustrated that people don't know that we have to teach them the basics of the Constitution and the separation of powers. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions about the separation of powers this next fall, and there should be. But we're not a country that mandates education. Education is very local. So, what a student gets in a school is dependent upon what the superintendent wants or what the principal or the individual teacher wants. And in the last 50 years, we have let it go by the wayside. I mean, I remember when I was in school, I had the civics curriculum was like in a catechism. 3 branches of government, and you had to memorize it, but you memorized things that were very important, and you knew them. You knew the freedoms protected by the First Amendment. So, on the one hand, it's extremely rewarding. On the other hand, it's a little frustrating and distressing that we're teaching adults the basics of the Constitution that we wish they knew without our intervention.
And I really understand that. When I go back to my early days in Philadelphia, just visiting the Franklin Institute, so I had an extra dime in my pocket. So what did I do with it? I bought a parchment copy of the Declaration of Independence. And if I had another quarter, I would have bought the Constitution, because these words meant so much to me back then. And I was 10 years old. And that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to. I didn't know it meant I wanted to be a lawyer or a judge. I just knew that I had to work with this. And when I became a lawyer and a judge and actually when I was a high school teacher, and saw how little curriculum was devoted to how our government works, I was surprised, but I never forgot it. So streaming through the high school teaching, law school, and then community agencies and organizations that I was a member of, I kept saying, "Oh my goodness, they don't know. They don't know." And I guess that's not something that the administrative office is creating programs for. I've got lots of programs for high schoolers, but even that is issue oriented, not systems oriented. How do I do this? And that's when I just thought that my role as a teacher was not done. It wasn't what I really wanted to do when I first went to college, but I was, I guess, shrewd enough to second major it. And I don't think that's ever left me. What came into focus, though, was who was the target? What was the target? The adult population was the target. And I think more than ever, that assessment, my personal assessment, has come true. Every day you can read some more ignorance in the news as to if they only understood, if they only knew. I feel that it's the reason I remain a judge, well past retirement age. Both of us can say that, because there isn't something else I want to do more than make sure that if I have a pulpit at all, it's to provide the truth and explain this system of ours that was, until recently, maybe still is, I hope, the envy of the world, the model for the world. And I still think we can rely on it. And I'm hoping so. So it's very personal to me now, more personal than it ever was before.
Yeah, thank you both for that. And so for the very last question, I wanted to ask, for those who are interested in doing and starting the amazing work that you both do, I would love to know what it takes for you to prepare this program, any expert tricks for those aspiring to get involved in such work. Yeah, anything like that.
So many things. I don't think you have time.
although it was easier than I would have thought,
Yeah.
because once you get the buy-in of the community college, and you pick up the phone, you call a community college, and you ask for somebody in charge of public community programming or whatever, and you talk to the person, and if they're interested, and they probably will be, then you sit down and you talk, and you decide whether it's going to be offered for credit, or ours is called a workshop, so it's not for credit. It's fairly easy. And who's going to do what, and then you get the judges, and the judges come up with their content. It's really easier than you think. It's not that complicated, because people love it. The judges love to do it. Community college wants to do it. I mean, what's wrong with this picture?
Nothing.
And I think our community colleges, as I said, they're so open and they're nimble. They'll have a room, and they'll have a person who, during the pandemic, we did videos and had the students watch the videos, and then we conducted Zoom Q&A sessions. And the community college had the ability to do this and put it up on their website. And I mean, they're just amazing. So, with the people that you're working with are interested and engaged, it's not that difficult. Now, I think Bucks County, you might have had more red tape, or was it
Not
more
really.
complicated? Not really.
Not at all. It was
Yeah.
less complicated in that the Bar Association was already riveted onto doing this. And that's because they had come and seen what we did.
Yeah.
And I think that the Bar Association leadership was integral here, working with the foundation for the community college. And they work like clockwork. And there was an example of the federal court is supplying the guts, that is the content. They were doing almost everything else. But of course, hands-on was my motto, because it was the first time there. And I really did think it was important to keep this basically in the form that we started it in. And this year, they don't want to change it at all. But I'm just trying to energize it too, re-energize it before we have any slack off. And I don't think there's any slack off this year. But I don't know that there are tricks, no tricks. I think what I've been trying to do is impress federal judges to reach into their own communities. I mean, in this circuit, how many counties do we have? How many community colleges? And see, is there one that you'd like to work with, that you'd like to bring this program to? And we have had inquiries from at least 5 different counties that we have sent our syllabus out, the ones that were created from our curriculum, our teachers' notes, and also from materials brought together by our court librarian, circuit librarian. And I think that if they follow through, it's going to be not easy for anybody, but once you do it, you can see that this is not difficult. It's not easy. It's not difficult. It's just right, said Mama to the 3 bears, Goldilocks. It's just right. But what's really right is when you have a partner that is a pleasure to work with. And Judge Rendell and I do see things very similarly, but we also know how to cut and paste and put it together. And we both have a lot of experience in this area. So it's a joy. That's all I can say. It's a joy.
Although, as you know from conducting this program, judges are doing a lot of things in the community, different judges. So, I wish more would pick up on this program, but a lot of people are already doing amazing things to educate the citizenry about our courts, about our democracy, about our Constitution. So, but I do have, as Cynthia said, we do have some others. I know Reading area, or not Reading, Harrisburg area Community College was interested. And I think
Northampton and Lehigh counties.
Right, Lehigh counties are
Montgomery
interested.
County and Delaware County. So they're all in the works.
Yeah, which is great.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and experiences. I'm sure many of those tuning in are as inspired as I am. And with that, as a member of the Berkeley Judicial Institute, I want to thank you both, Judge Rendell and Judge Rufe, so much for the amazing insights on your guys' involvement with community colleges and, into the judicial world. So thank you.